Hello. So what is Christian Zionist? First, we need to explain what is Zionism. There are two types of Zionism. One is classic Zionism and the other one is modern Zionism. What's classic Zionism? That's actually a term that is quite new to reference to any kind of Zionism before modern Zionism. And the idea is that anyone that came to the land of Israel, a Jew that came to the land of Israel in the Ottoman period before modern Zionism, in the Mamluk period, in the Crusade period, for example, those could be considered as classic Zionism. They believe that when the Messiah will come, then all the Jews will return from the exile and they're going to return from the exile to the land of Israel. And they're going to rule over themselves. They're going to be independent and they're going to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and basically a new age of happiness and justice will be spread all over the world. This is what the Bible is basically talking about if you read Isaiah and Jeremiah and so on. All right, so there were waves of Jews from all sorts of countries over the generation of people that either believed that the Messiah already came, or they believe that if they're gonna come, then the Messiah will come. So in the Crusade period and also in the Mamluk period, there were Jews, especially Jews that study Kabbalah, that believed that the Messiah already came and they need to go, because the Messiah already came, they need to go to the land of Israel. All right, and they usually were very disappointed. And in the Ottoman period time, from the 16th century until the 19th century, there were Jews, especially from East Europe, that came because they believed that by going to the land of Israel, this will awaken the Messiah and a new age of Messiah will come. And indeed, that late period, talking about the end of the 18th century Jews, some of them were Hasidic Jews, some of them were opposing Hasidic Jews, they actually saw this thing of Messianic Jews or Judaism a bit different, and they were much more bustling and much more active. And this is why out of them a new form of Zionism was formed, and that is actually the modern Zionism. Okay, what's modern Zionism? Modern Zionism actually says something very simple, and the first modern Zionist was actually Rabbi Chaim Schneerson, which was a rabbi from Israel, from Jerusalem, and he was the messenger of Tiberius and also of Hebron. And he actually said already in 1867 that the Jews need to have a state of their own. And check out what he's saying. Regardless if the Messiah has already come or will come, it has no connection. The Jews need to have a state because this is their land and because they are being oppressed all over the world. And if they're going to have their own state, at least they're going to have a chance to sustain themselves, because they are being oppressed in their own country. And he was referring to the Ottoman period, that the Ottomans and the Arabs and the Muslims were oppressing the Jews of Israel. So, and what he was saying was not really accepted by the Jews in Israel at that time. There were other Jews that kind of like muffle it down, like Rabbi El-Kalai and Rabbi Kalasher, that says, yes, we need to have a state, and then the Messiah will come, and we're going to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. So it was much more easy to, and they actually managed to do much more. He influenced it directly to secular Jews like Moshe Hess and Pinsker. And those people said, look, we need to go to the land of Israel and we need to buy lands. We need to work the land, agriculture. We need to cultivate the land. The land was deserted and destroyed after so many years of Muslim occupation that destroy the land with wars and with hunger and with simply with negligence, because this is how they rule. They neglect. They make everything into a desert, and that's the reality. And this is what they had in mind. They thought, then, because we cultivate the land, and then we might get the approval of the Ottomans or anyone else that is willing to give us that, the British or the Russians or the Germans, whoever is, and we will have a state eventually that we can have more Jews coming and live in there, where they can be free from anti-Semitism and from all the constant hate from Christians and from Muslims. That was the idea that they had. And then Herzl came, and he's the one that really amplified modern Zionism, and said, we need to talk directly to the leaders of the nations in the world, and we need to be granted from them permission to settle the land of Israel, and then we need to do all sorts of other stuff. We need to sell what we have in the diaspora and use that money to buy lands and to build industry. And so he actually made a really well-led plan of how to create a state. And he also envisioned how the state would look already in the end of the 19th century. And this propelled more and more Jews, particularly secular Jews, that were sick of anti-Semitism, to come to the land of Israel. And those guys, they work hard, they dried off lands, they were real Zionists. They had to really live on the elements, coming to a place that had nothing, and to fence off against Bedouin and Arabs trying to steal from them or kill them, and to basically build from zero, to build fields and houses and buildings and industry, and producing silk and producing wine and also and crops and milk and all this other stuff. It took some time, but they did it. A lot of sacrifice, money of people that came to the land. Some of them died of malaria, but still they continued that. And it wasn't a secular Zionist. Zionism was actually a part from their faith, from their identity. So they knew that they are rediscovering something that they already knew, but it was sleeping for such a long time because of occupation, because of oppression, because of so many failed attempts that we believe that the Messiah came and then it didn't come. So much disappointment, and so much despair. Those were Zionists, and those Zionists eventually were granted by the British. Among them were really people that were Zionists in the 100% turn of time. People like Lawrence of Arabia, people like Arthur Balfour. They really believe that Jews should have a state regardless of everything. Doesn't matter. The first thing, Jews should have a state. Should have a state, and from then do whatever you want. It could be a democracy. It doesn't matter. They should have a state. Simply put, and they did whatever they could in order to make sure it happened. And indeed, the Balfour Declaration, 1917, and then 1920, when the British Monarch of Palestine started. This is actually when, for real, in practice, the state of Israel was reborn. It was not independent yet, but in many ways, 90% basically, the state was already, in that specific year, in 1920, actually had all the instrument and the structures and the institutions of a state. I'm talking about everything, about a government, about a parliament, about a Supreme Court, about logistic systems, about a military power, everything that a state has. So those are Zionists, okay? Now today, we don't need to do all this kind of work, all right? Because we already living in the land that was created. So what left to do is to mainly support the state of Israel, against all sorts of attacks made by people which are generally anti-Semitic or really ill-informed about about what the news is telling them, so much bullshit. So it actually doesn't really take for anyone that is not Jewish to you don't need to walk that far. You don't need to dry off a swamp. You don't need to build I don't know an egg house somewhere in next to the Jordan River, or have a sword on you and build tents in during the night, or something like this, like Zionists used to do in the 30s and the 40s and afterwards. You just need to support the state of Israel, not the government of Israel. You don't have to support the government of Israel. Just support its rights to exist, and it's not too much to ask, because the alternative not to support the state of Israel is not only stupid, it's evil. All right, and I'm gonna tell you all about it. Some people are saying that they are indifferent, that they don't care if Israel exists or doesn't exist. They say doesn't matter to them. They say that they are not anti-Semitic. And they have Jewish friends. They just don't care if Israel exists or doesn't exist. It's just another country. All right. Now this is one thing that you might hear, and I think that it's completely anti-Semitic to say such a thing, that you don't care. You have Jewish friends, you're not anti-Semitic, but you don't care if Israel exists or doesn't exist. I think that's totally anti-Semitic to say that. Now, there is the other side, all right? Think about Immanuel Kant, for example. Immanuel Kant is a very famous scientist and so on and whatever, and a very important person when it comes to the Enlightenment movement and so on. And he said, he's actually saying, the Jews are the Palestinians among us. And he was actually saying that because he was referring to the Jews as people that came from the Levant, from what the Christian call Palestine. This is their homeland. And so you might say, oh, you see, he was a Zionist. He was not a Zionist, all right? Just because that it was completely and abundantly clear to him that all Jews come from the land of Israel, which today it's something that you actually need to debate with someone if it's true or not true. You actually need to debate something that is so obvious. Yet he hated them. That's because when he was alive, there was no state of Israel. And the idea that one day there will be a Jewish state in the land of Israel was not accepted. It wasn't there. This idea that the Jews one day will have a state didn't really exist. And this, at least not among Christians, all right? It was not in their realm of thought, right? There were Jews that dream about having a kingdom again, of many Jews, because this is what Jews are praying for every day. We are praying to live free and independently in our homeland every day. Every day Jews pray for that. So for Jews it was obvious that one day we want to live in our state. But for Christian, even for someone like Immanuel Kant, that was very educated, it was not clear to him. But more than that, he actually thought that Jews are cheaters, that they are liars. But he actually excused that, saying that because they are displaced, because that they are living in exile and so on, and because of a lot of Christian limitation that is imposed on them, they are not allowed to work in all sorts of jobs because they're not Christians. Then they are working in all sorts of jobs that are a bit gray, on the verge of criminals, which was also not true. But yes, indeed there were some Jews that they were lending money because that's the only job that they could do to support them, because the Christians did not allow them to work in any kind of job. Yes, that's the reality. So basically, it's Christianity that created the situation of the Jews living in ghetto and working in trade and banking and money lending and all this other stuff. It is true. So he was not a Zionist. He was anti-Semitic in many ways, but he wasn't anti-Semitic like people that saying that they don't care. All right, he just didn't know that a state of Israel is something that could exist, because he was not that aware to what Jews are talking among themselves and what they think. He didn't care that much as well. All right, but now that Israel exists, you cannot say that you don't know. You do know. All right, so saying that you don't care is on the verge of antisemitism, if not anti-Semitism. All right. And another thing, the people that actually really oppose Israel to exist, what world do they envision? A world that basically Jews, if they are alive, let's say in Canada, then they are totally at the mercy of the tolerance of the people that live them. Now, of course, if you're anti-Semitic, you believe that Jews control the media and Jews control the government. So even if they don't have a state, then they control the government and they control the media. So they're gonna be just fine. Maybe once in a while they're gonna be beaten up or something like this, or maybe gonna be massacred. But that's they get what they deserve. So if you are anti-Semitic, if everything makes sense to you, it all kind of like circle around. You don't need to have a state for the Jews, because even if they don't have one, they control the government, they control the media, they control the banking, so they're gonna be just fine. And even if they're not fine, that's not my problem. This is basically what anti-Semitic people think. And this is really like an evil circle, because this is completely not the way it is. Jews do not control the media, and Jews do not control the banks, and they do not control government. All right. By the way, people saying that the Jews control the media. Excuse me, how many movies about Sukkot have you ever seen? What about Hanukkah? What about Passover, Purim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shavuot, Tisha B'Av? Are there any movies or shows about that? No. If Jews were ruling the media, you will have maybe 200 movies about Sukkot. Instead, you have 200 movies about Christmas and Halloween and Thanksgiving. How come there are no movies about Hanukkah or Sukkot or even Purim? How come there are no movies about it? How come there are no movies about famous Jewish scholars like the Rambam or the Ramban, or about Rashi? How come there's no movie about Rashi, the most important commentator on the Bible? There is no movie about him. How come? There's simply no movies of it. There's no movie about the Maccabees, for example. Not even one. How come? So Jews definitely don't control the media, and definitely, as you can see, Israel has been all the time being attacked by the Arabs, attacked by the UN, attacked by Europe all the time. There's difficulties. So the Jews definitely don't control the government. So stop with all this nonsense, crazy thing. And so if Israel would not exist in the world today, Jews all over the world will be basically physically be massacred. If they live in a Western country, a liberal country, they're going to be constantly attacked by Muslims, by Arabs, and by woke, progressive, liberal people who think that violence is a legitimate way to express your opinion. So this is actually a manuscript for extermination of the Jewish people. The Jews need to have Israel at least as a place for them to escape if they are in trouble in living in the West or in the East or whatever. All right, and this is one of the reasons why Israel was established by the Jews, is that it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It doesn't matter at all. At least the Jews have a place to run away. in addition to the fact that this is their ancestral homeland, all right? So really, if you are anti-Zionist, when you think about it, this is pure evil, pure evil. Like everything, and anti-Zionist is anti-Semitism, you know? There is no argument that is anti-Zionist that is not anti-Semitic. When you think about it, there's not like, oh, I don't have a problem with Jews. I just don't think that they should have a state. All right. No, I never heard such a thing. Because if you think about it completely, then you get into a lot of anti-Semitic tropes that I just mentioned. Oh, they're going to be just fine. No, they won't be just fine. Not at all. They need Israel. All right. And this is why, if you are even if you're a Christian, even if you're a Muslim, doesn't really matter. You should support Israel. You should be a Zionist simply because that makes you a good person. All right.